Welcome to Spiritual Dialogue with Father Odon de Castro. We are here at Cariana Lay Monastic Community. I'm your host, Brother Lodi. With us is Sister Tachi.
Yes, Father.
Father?
So, last time, we have been discussing the reason why the whole Catholic world is confused. And the reason is because our teachers, who are the bishops and the priests, are themselves confused. So, we are confused, the laymen are confused, everybody's confused. And we mentioned the fact that we are disentangling the confusion in the Catholic Church by trying to discover what are the source of the confusion and correcting them using Catholic doctrines as the basis for our correction. So when we say this is wrong, we say what is the Catholic doctrine which has been violated. And we have been discussing many of these defects proposed by the bishops all over the world. And so it is proposed also by the bishops in the Philippines, not all of them, but most of them. And these proposals are mostly erroneous. And we are now discussing the next erroneous thing that they are proposing, and this is the acceptance of immigrants. And we say that, this has to be done properly. Has to be done properly. It's called a good work, like what you're saying, Lodi. What's wrong with accepting immigrants? Accepting immigrants is a good work, but it must be done properly. And Pope Benedict, when he was Pope, issued an encyclical entitled Deus Caritas Est. It's about charity. And he said, I didn't say it, he was the one who said it, and he was right, that most Catholics do not know how to perform good works. They do not know. And so most of the good works of Catholics are invalid in the eyes of God. And an example of this is receiving immigrants. We don't know how to do it correctly. And so we're doing it so badly that it is causing more problems. It is causing more the destruction of souls rather than the salvation of souls. So this proposal, which has been advanced by Pope Francis himself, that is being observed by so many European nations, and now there is a plan for the Philippines to observe this proposal. We're going to show that it goes against two of the most important teaching of the Catholic Church. It goes against two of the most important Catholic teaching of the Catholic Church, which is first, the teaching on divine providence and the teaching on charity. And I mentioned the word charity because it's Pope Benedict who noticed this, that Catholics are doing their acts of charity wrongly, and therefore it's not helping anybody. And in his Deus Caritas Est encyclical, he gave the example of two persons who are performing charity properly. The first is my favorite saint, Saint Vincent de Paul. And this is a very popular order here in the Philippines and all over the world. They usually run seminaries, Saint Vincent de Paul. They're called the Vincentians. And the other one proposed or mentioned by Pope Benedict is Saint Teresa of Calcutta. So he mentioned these two people as the exemplar of doing good works properly, and he was hinting the fact that everybody else is doing it wrongly. Now, if you go against charity, you're practically going against the entire teaching of the Catholic Church. You go to hell.
Yes.
And if you go against divine providence, which is one of the foundational teaching of the Catholic Church, you go to hell. In fact, if you go against charity and divine providence, you are not a Catholic at all. And as we're going to notice, Pope Francis is going against those two doctrines by proposing open door immigration. It's being gone against by many of the bishops abroad in Europe, in the United States, in the Philippines. They're going against Catholic doctrine, and therefore the possibility of they saving their souls is very far.
Sister?
Yeah. What did I say? I'm aghast. Anyway, Father.
So let's look at divine providence. If there is a God, you try to imagine who is God. He must be very intelligent.
Of course, Father.
Of course, yeah. That's right, of course. But that's not very obvious with everybody, you know. In fact, the very encyclical of Pope Francis, Laudato Si, about global warming, is in fact saying that God is very dumb.
So that's a sign.
A sign of what?
Sign that the God is somewhat
That the teaching is
disappointed.
wrong. That the
Yes.
teaching is wrong.
Yeah.
That believing in global warming is not believing in God. It is a sign that you have no faith. And if you have no faith, you have no charity.
Yes, Father.
No? So let's go back to what you said, Lordy, that God is intelligent. He should be. And we can see it from his creation. Saint Thomas of Aquinas, quoting Saint Augustine, has the 5 proof of the existence of God. And it really shows that God is very, very, very intelligent. And no doubt about that. And one of the most popular person who is denouncing the fact that he is intelligent is Pope Francis and the entire whole world. The attitude of the entire whole world and Pope Francis is, God is so dumb that we have to
Oh, my
run the
God.
world ourselves.
My God.
So it's the United Nations who should run the world. It's a one religion, a one society who should run the world, not God. That's why there is that Laudato Si. Let's save the world. What's Pope Francis trying to say?
That's a big mistake, Father.
Well, that's where we're trying to direct our discussion. So, divine providence is the most important foundational doctrine of the Catholic Church. It is foundational in the sense that remove divine providence and the entire Catholic Church collapses. All the doctrines collapses. So all the doctrines is based on divine providence.
Can you explain it briefly in a very simple manner so that we will fully understand this divine providence, please?
Yeah, my explanation is always simple because I am simple-minded. That's the most I can do.
No, you-
Keep simple. So anyway, divine providence is God is so intelligent that if he wanted to save your soul, Lodi
Yeah.
and Tachi, if he wanted to save your soul, and he wants to save your soul,
Yes, Father. Yes.
and that's the only reason he created you,
Yes.
and that's the reason why he sent his son to die, to save your souls.
Yes, Father.
If he didn't create you, he has no problem about saving your soul. He has no problem. But he's so intelligent that when he created you, he made sure that he would place you in a situation where the salvation of your soul is or has the greatest possibility.
Yes, Father, I understand that.
Now you try to imagine, Brother Lodi, that statement that God will place you in an environment where your salvation will be of the greatest possibility, which means that if God thinks that your salvation is greater if you live in a cold, snowy climate, He'll put you in Alaska. And God believes that there are certain people who can easier be saved if they were in Alaska. That's why there are people in Alaska. That's the best for them. And if God thinks that you, Brother Lodi, has the greatest chance of being saved by being a Filipino, He will make you a Filipino.
So,
But I would say, Father, that I am here. This is where God puts me to save my soul.
Exactly. That's divine providence, precisely, you know.
Yes, Father.
And the Philippines is large. So if God thought that your salvation would be greater if you were in the Visayas, He would have put you there. But God thinks that your salvation would be greatest if you were in Marikina, where you are. So He put you there. So God did not make you an American because He knew that your possibility of being saved will be less if you are an American.
I see.
So He did not make you an American.
Yes, Father, I understand.
He made you Filipino.
Yes.
So what are you going to do if you left the Philippines and go to America? What are you trying to do?
I'll be lost.
you're putting your family in danger
You
of,
are going against divine
Providence. Okay. Yes, Father.
which is a sin. It's going against God's will. That's a sin.
Yes, Father. Because it's God's command or something.
It is His will
So, yes.
that you were born a Filipino.
Yes, Father.
So anyone who encourages other people to go where they were not created by God or God did not
Not
place
put them
them is committing the greatest sin. Those who obey Him and transfer are sinning, but he who is encouraging them is committing the greater sin.
yes.
Is that?
Yes, because it will that's endangering their soul because that's not divine providence for them, right, Father?
It is lessening and lessening and
Their chances
lessening
for
their
salvation.
chances of being saved.
But
People
they
don't
said
see
that we have freedom to choose what we
To go,
what
freedom to
we
go to hell.
want. For example,
Yeah.
if I live as a Protestant, did God put me there to be a Protestant?
No. It's because you chose it.
He chose to be Protestant.
Remember,
I
all
see.
Protestants have the choice to be a Catholic or to be a Protestant. It's precisely because we have a free will that we can go against God's will, as Adam and Eve did. And that's the reason why you, Brother Lodi, can disobey God's will of creating you a Filipino and trying to be an American citizen.
I see, yes, I understand.
In fact, Filipinos love to go to America. Most of my relatives are there, and I often go there for different reasons. So to the question of Tassie, what happens to people going around in the world? I often leave the Philippines and go to America. Well, because Christ says, go to all nations, baptize them,
Preach the
teach
gospel.
them. So you may go to other nations, you may immigrate to teach them to become Catholics. And you may leave your country and go to a nation where you can easily learn to become Catholic.
And that is the good reason for accepting immigrant if the people here will teach them the right kind of doctrine.
In other words, the good work is if you accept immigrants in order to convert them. That's the only valid reason for accepting immigrants. Only valid in the eyes of God. Any other reason is a sin. It's going against God's will. It's going against divine providence.
Converging to Christianity or to Catholicism.
It has to be Catholicism, of course, because that's what we believe is a true religion. I mean, we're not going to invite immigrants to become pagans.
Yes, of course.
That's
Brother.
practically sending them to hell,
Yes,
diba?
brother.
So it is because of that that the proposal to accept immigrants proposed by Pope Francis and now being proposed by the Bishops' Conference of the Philippines to the President of the Philippines under the influence of Cardinal Tagle, who has given a speech precisely sponsored by the United Nations, encouraging all nations to accept immigrants. To do so is against the teachings of the Catholic Church, against the doctrine of divine providence.
I'm sorry, Father. I'm sorry we don't have much time. Father Rodon de Castro will discuss this immigration's next episode. Thank you for watching Spiritual Dialogue with Father Rodon de Castro. Thank you so much.
Hosanna, Hosanna.